Father in heaven, thank you so much. Thank you that there is peace in our Savior. The world may be in turmoil, but we have a calm in the storm. Thank you so much for even as we look into David's life and we see the turmoil there, we're so thankful, God, that we can flee to you. Give us wisdom to hear and see our Savior today through the Holy Spirit, opening up our hearts to the Word. All for Christ. Amen. Okay. Let's get rolling here. This section, these next few chapters, would be real easy to jump over and just to skim through. Nobody likes to take time to look at somebody else's failure. It's hard to look at these chapters of what David's going through. I mean, for the first 25 years of his life, every decision was God-honoring, God-blessed, just incredible stuff happening. But then all of a sudden, we had that one spring day with Bathsheba. Then we had her husband murdered by David's order, and now he's sitting on a throne with just complete disorder, disarray, confusion in his whole house. But the scriptures tell us for everything that's written in the past was written to teach us, so that through endurance taught in the scriptures and the encouragement they provide, we might find hope. So even as we look at some of these difficult, horrendous situations, there is a message, there is warnings, there is encouragement with those. 1 Corinthians 10 says these things happened to them as examples. They were written down as warnings for us who live at the end of the age. So what I want to do, wisdom, I was thinking about this, wisdom is choosing the right path and decisions as you observe the word and look from other people's mistakes. Experience is learning the right path based upon your painful mistakes. And so I'd rather have wisdom than experience, because wisdom will give me the experience I need without having to go through it. But unfortunately, I've gone through a lot of experience. King David was a great soldier, a mighty leader, an incredible general of troops, but an insightful, caring father. I think he cared, but he didn't have insight. It is amazing he could read soldiers so well, but he couldn't read his kids as well as he could if they were in battle. Ran across this verse, "O shepherd, know well the faces of your sheep. Give close attention to your flocks, for riches do not last forever, and the crown might not endure to the next generation." Proverbs 27. I thought, wow, that's very interesting that Solomon would probably write that. So here's the lineup of today's interesting characters. I tapped into their LinkedIn page and got these profile pictures here. We've got Amnon. He's the firstborn. Okay, he's first in line for the crown. He loves Tamar, at least he did, but he really has incredibly low morals. He's ruled by his passions more than a heart for God. We have Absalom, who would be third born, but he's next in line after Amnon. He definitely watches over. He loves his family. They have a really tight bond, and there's a reason they have a really tight bond. But he's always plotting and scheming. He has other ambitions than just to be second in the kingdom. He wants to be first. And of course, you have his beautiful full sister. She honors God. She's chaste, and she knows the scriptures and the history. And we went through that last week with her arguments to Amnon. I mean, her 8-point bullet is like a lawyer arguing in front of a judge, and everything she says is just spot on to really know the scriptures and to honor God. So we know what happened with Amnon and Tamar. Horrible situation. And after he had done what he had done to her, his love instantly turned into hatred, because he didn't love her agape love. All he wanted to do was satisfy his lust, and that's all that happened there. So Amnon's attendant threw out Tamar and bolted the door behind her. Now Tamar was wearing a robe of many colors, because this is what the king's virgin daughters wore. Tamar flees his house, puts ashes on her heads, tore her robe, and putting her hand on her head, and she went away crying bitterly. Horrible situation. But she runs to her brother's house, Absalom, and he says to her, "Has that Amnon your brother been with you?" A very tactful way to saying, did he do something horrible, which I think Absalom kind of figured it out real fast. Then Absalom says, "Be quiet for now, my sister. He is your brother. Don't take this thing to heart." And Tamar lived in her brother's Absalom's house, a desolate woman. And we looked at what that meant last week. Just a horrible situation. However, King David had a much different response. He got furious and then didn't do a darn thing about it. And in the Septuagint, it says, "But he did not curb his son's excesses, for Amnon because he was favored to be the firstborn, which would mean he would be next in line for the crown. So some of the texts have that line in it, but it's interesting because King David didn't do anything to Amnon after this had happened. But Absalom spoke to Amnon neither good nor bad. So this goes on from that day. Absalom never says another word to his brother, the crown prince, at all. For Absalom hated Amnon because he had violated his sister Tamar. After 2 full years, could you imagine not speaking to someone in your family for 2 full years? I mean, hopefully that hasn't happened, but that's what was taking place. And the whole underlying foundation to this is about justice or about revenge or about plotting to get that ounce of flesh from somebody who's hurt you. And have you ever been hurt deeply or betrayed by someone? Or maybe it's someone you love deeply, they've been betrayed by someone, and you take up that offense and that hurt for them. You know, the temptation is to think that I must begin to plot and plan and strategize for payback or justice for the wrong that someone inflicted upon me or someone who's close to me. And that is a dangerous path to start, because once you start down it, it's rare that you can come back off it, because the emotion and the passion will just zero you in, and you will become obsessed with ruining, hurting, or that individual. What would be some reasons Absalom would feel so strongly about revenge? I mean, just some obvious ones. His sister, yep, his beloved little sister. I mean, the family sticks together, mostly. Yep, yeah. Absalom, I think, felt jealous that he's thinking, Amnon doesn't have the character to be a king. This guy is just, all he's focused upon is his own lust and desires. He sits home all day, he drinks, he plays video games. He has no passion to be a king or to rule. He doesn't care about anybody, he just cares about himself. And so Absalom feels that he's just not worthy, and he's absolutely right. And then, of course, this is one of those things that if you understand the background, you'll understand why this is important. They both probably feel a little bit looked down upon because their mother is a foreigner, is a Gentile. Okay, remember she was the daughter of the king of Geshur. So and that's up near North Galilee. So similar to Boaz, how Boaz felt, because Boaz was a half-breed, so to speak. Not Boaz. Yeah, Boaz was. I'm sorry. Boaz was because his mother was Ruth, and then all of a sudden not Boaz. What am I saying here? Forget it. Let's go on. Oh, okay.
No more coffee.
No more coffee. No more coffee. All right. 2 choices. When someone hurts you, what can we do? Okay. Or, well, you can get even, but that's not one of the 3 choices. So forget that door. Well, there's nothing wrong with allowing God's justice to run its course. I mean, if someone has hurt you or someone you love, it's perfectly fine to pursue the avenues of justice. That's why we have them. Romans 13 talks about the authorities that exist have been established by God. They do not bear the sword in vain, but they're there to punish wrongdoers. So if somebody has done something wrong to you, it's perfectly fine to utilize a course of justice as long as you allow the justice to do the course and don't take justice into your own hands. Okay? Fair enough. Or you can commit that reproach or the injustice to God and be blessed. Okay? 1 Peter 3 talks about how if you suffer for doing good and endure it, this is commendable before God. 1 Peter 2. And when they hurled insults at Christ, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. And the Greek word on entrust is paradiem, and it means to give over to someone close to you. It's not just chuck the burden off your shoulders. It means give that burden to someone who was right there next to you. So what Jesus did is he entrusted himself to the love and the personal care of his Father. And so when someone comes against us and maligns our character or says things that are not true, now if they're true, you probably better confess and start working on your character. But if you're being maligned or attacked because of just lies, or someone has an ulterior motive, or somebody just wants to hurt you, or they want your position, or whatever their motivation is, we can entrust ourselves to God, because I would rather have God fighting for me righteously than me trying to bumble my way through revenge, because you're not going to know all the details, and you're probably going to make mistakes, and you're going to definitely violate a command of Scripture. Beloved, do not take revenge. It's not something that we as Christians are supposed to do. We have to have a love in our hearts that can overcome that desire for revenge and payback if somebody hurts us. Questions, comments? Mike?
Michael, when I was a teenager, I had a health episode where I almost was getting an ulcer.
Jeez.
And, back in the day, the doctor had to talk with you, when you were worried about something, seventh grader, I answered as best I could. Well, their advice was to stop worrying. And I, of course, didn't tell you how to do that. Well,
there's an app for that.
My strategy was apathy. And I didn't know that I was doing that at the time, but I just thought, well, I can't worry anymore, so I just don't care. And I just chose not to care. But I didn't realize till later that was worse than worrying. And it's a cancer in itself.
Wow.
Then later, though, I learned a much better way, and it's what you're describing, but I came across John 10:10. Jesus said, I came that you might have life and have it more abundantly. And it's putting it in God's hands by faith.
Yeah, absolutely.
By faith that His way is better.
Absolutely. Yeah, don't expect an email from God saying, hey, I'm going to take care of that guy for you. It's not that kind of an assurance or an entrusting. It's letting God handle it in His time and His way, and it may not even be in your lifetime that He settles the score. And that takes a lot of trust to know that God is going to settle the score, but He'll do it in His own time, in His own way. Thank you for sharing that. Well, after 2 full years now, again, just think about 2 full years, nothing was said about what Amnon did to Tamar. The time for patience is over. Now it's the time for revenge. After 2 full years, Absalom had sheep shearers at Baal-hazar, which is near Ephraim, and Absalom invited all the king's sons. So he went to the king, King David, and said, hey, my sheep shearers, they're all now at work. Would the king and his servants, basically the court, please come to celebrate this occasion with me? Okay? Well, sheep shearing was a big deal. It's kind of like winning the lottery. You work, and all of a sudden your sheep grow the wool. Now you shear the sheep, and it's a great time of celebration. You definitely get a good, windfall income on that. Everybody's happy. They make it into a big party occasion. There's food. There's all kinds of wine, and just everyone's happy. It's just because they see it as God blessing them. And God promised, if you obey me, I will bless. And so this was a real sign of blessing. It always took place in the spring, which I thought was interesting. It's a time of jubilation, celebration, and it's an honor to be invited to a sheep shearing. It's like kind of getting that golden ticket to the award ceremony. You want to be there, but you just can't get there. But if you get invited to a sheep shearing, because everything's free. The food, the lodging, everything is going to be free. It's going to be a real time, and it's not just a one-nighter. It usually lasts about a week or so. So this is what Absalom has planned for 2 years to find a way to make this work. So here's the map, okay? And again, it's not easy planning someone's assassination. It takes a lot of work. I don't know if you tried or not, but it takes a lot of work. But then you better be smart enough to plan your escape route too. Unless you want to die in the midst of it all. So you need to not only plan the assassination, but you better have an escape route that's going to get you out of the trouble. So careful thought went into the act and where it will take place. Okay, why couldn't Absalom just kill Amnon in Jerusalem? Now, he could do what Ehud did back in 1 Kings. He could have a sword strapped to his leg, go in and give his brother a hug, and hey, how you doing? And shoot the breeze, and then pull the sword out and stick it into him. Okay, that's what Ehud did to King Eglon, the Moabite king, and then he got away, fortunately. But that's probably not going to work because number one, Amnon's servants are going to be there. They're going to hear something. They're going to know something. The guards are going to be alerted. It's. You could do it, but to kill the crown prince in Jerusalem trapped in a city is probably not a good idea, okay? I mean, this is what Absalom had to think through. How am I going to assassinate him and still have an option to live? Because I don't want to kill him and then just die. That doesn't accomplish much at all. And he wouldn't have an alibi. I mean, it would be pretty obvious that he got caught in the act, and then he's banished from being in the crowd. So he's got to work this out some way so that he can get rid of Amnon. Then he'd be next in line for the crown, but he's got to do it in such a way that he's got some options to still make that happen. So getting Amnon to leave the safety of the city is no small task either. I mean, the crown prince is not going to just travel anywhere without guards, and I mean, everyone knows that Amnon is going to be next in line for after King David passes away. So he has his own detachment of guards. So anywhere he would go, he's going to have his guards and his servants with him. Okay? So he needs a darn good reason to leave the city and avoiding any suspicion. See, this is the key. That's why Absalom waited 2 years. I mean, 2 years is a long time. But this is how the thinking is in the Middle East. We plan for revenge the moment it happens, and we want to execute it in a week. This Eastern culture of thinking is that they don't care if it takes 2 years, 10 years, 20 years. They're going to plot, plan, and systematically work to catch you at your least strongest moment and take advantage of that full opportunity to eliminate you. The sheep shearing festival would be perfect cover for Amnon's murder. So Absalom planned very carefully by asking King David and the court officials first to join them to do this. So this is what takes place. He first asked David if he and the court officials would join him. So Absalom goes to King David. My sheep shearers or Balhazar are now at work. Would the king and his servants, the court, please come and celebrate with me? I mean, perfect cover. Have King David come, get all the court attendants up there. I mean, that's going to be quite a crowd coming up there. He knew that David's age and David's duties are probably going to keep him tied down at the castle. But he still asked David because he's got to get David's blessing on this event and get Amnon up there. So Absalom knew that even the distance, about 8 miles, just would probably deter David. You got to remember, David's probably pushing late 50s now. So he's getting a little tired. He's been a soldier all his life, but he's definitely feeling the wear and tear on his body. And here it is again. David misses a warning sign. You know, how many times have your kids said something to you or a friend said something to you, and later on you look back and you said, now I know what they were really talking about. Now I know what they were scheming. Now I know what they were plotting. No, my son, the king replied, all of us should not go. We would only be a burden to you. Although Absalom urged him, he still refused to go, but gave him his blessing. Could you imagine if David said, oh, all right, yeah, I'll go up there. Plan would have never worked. So just as Absalom had calculated, he knew his father better than his father knew him. And now we go to the kill question. So if David's not going to go, well, who could go representing David? Well then, Absalom said, if you can't come, how about sending my brother Amnon with us? See, Amnon could go in an official capacity representing David because he's heir to the crown. So see how this just makes perfect sense? And you see how this could subtly get David to drop his guard? Now again, nothing's been said for 2 years about Absalom's hatred for Amnon. But it's obvious to those who are paying attention, David's just not paying attention to what's actually taking place. Then the king asked, why should he go with you? But you see, he's got that covered because he says he will represent you. I mean, it's just in the mindset, if Amnon comes, it's like you coming, David, and I want you to come, but since you can't come, send Amnon. It makes sense. And so, you know, I wonder, and this will be a question I ask David, what was going through your mind at that very moment? Why did you ask that question? Were you concerned at all? Was there any hesitation? Was the Holy Spirit whispering something to you quietly, but you didn't listen to it? Because the last time a son asked a favor of you, horrible things happened. Because remember when Amnon was pretending, oh, I don't feel good, send my beautiful half-sister Tamar to me and have her bake it in front of me so I can eat it from her hand. Okay, that sounds kind of creepy to me, okay? That's just, I would be a little concerned about that if my son said that about his half-sister. That just doesn't make sense. Just get your butt out of bed and feed yourself. Go down to Burger King and pick something up. You don't need my daughter to make you something. But having him attend would cover the crown. But Absalom kept on pressing the king until he finally agreed to let all his sons, including Amnon, go. Just as Absalom had calculated, the kill shot question for Amnon leaving the city worked. Go for David first and all the court. I mean, that would be a whole bunch of people. And David knows, as he's kind of running through the calculations, that's a really heavy burden upon my son Absalom. That's going to cost a lot of silver and gold. Plus, we need to stay here and take care of business. Plus, I'm not feeling like riding on a mule for 8 miles. That's no fun either. So, okay, let all the sons go. Then I begin to wonder, I wonder if Tamar knew about this plot to pay back Amnon. I mean, I don't know if Absalom kept it from her, if he just as a big brother took it on the chin and just was going to deal with this, or whether she had any indication that he was going to pay back for what Amnon did.
Michael, where is Tamar at this point?
She's living in Absalom's house, desolate. So she's just, unfortunately, we don't hear anything else about her in Scripture. The last piece of information was she moved into Absalom's house and stayed there and died a widow. Horrible. Did Amnon not consider the possibility of Absalom's hatred still for him? I mean, if you've done something that has really hurt someone, and then that someone wants to be your friend, buddy, after a few years, it's like, no, that doesn't make sense to me. I mean, even Amnon should have had some signals going off. But again, what type of person is Amnon? Hey, a party, free wine. Hey, this sounds like a good time for me. I'm in it.
Well, shouldn't have King David known that they hadn't talked for 2 years?
Well, they don't live in the palace. The guys don't live in the palace. The women live in the palace. They're under lock and key, so to speak. They're closely watched. But Amnon has his own house. Absalom has his own house, and so no, it wouldn't be necessary for David to be aware of that. And here was the thing that it said: even if they did come together for, say, David's birthday party, Absalom's not saying anything bad to Amnon. He's not saying anything good either, but he's not saying anything bad. So unless you're very perceptive, you don't pick up on those underlying tones. So like with me and Crystal can pick up very, very unique perceptions about people. I just miss it completely. And so we'll talk about someone, not in the class or anything, but we'll talk about someone. No, like the kids, something will come up with the kids, and she say, "Don't you think that seems strange that our daughter was going to do that?" I said, "No." She goes, "Yeah, but you remember who she's going with? That person 2 years ago did something at the school, got in trouble." I said, "Oh, you know what? You're right. Hey, you're not going to the party. Sorry." How come? Because Mom said so.
You're not like having Sunday dinner every week either.
No,
You're
no.
not getting together even weekly, let alone daily.
If they are getting together, Absalom has this so carefully crafted that he could be in Amnon's presence and you wouldn't pick up on it. Unless Crystal's there, or one of you guys who has that spirit of discernment.
They're not picking up on it.
Huh?
I don't see how the women are not picking up on it.
Well, I'm sure people picked up on it, but the women typically weren't fellowshipping with the men. I mean, something like this would not happen in that situation. You wouldn't have men and women all just hanging out together and slapping each other on the back and sharing a cup of coffee. It's a whole different culture. It's a mindset. So if the women are not being a part of the daily interaction with the guys, they're not going to know what's going on. Now, I'm sure they all knew that Amnon had done this horrible thing to Tamar, because all of a sudden Tamar's not living in the palace anymore. She was living there, but now she's not. So I'm sure everybody knew it, but nobody could see Absalom seething under the surface. He disguised it very, very well. And then, of course, I wonder if David felt like if all the sons are there, I feel a little bit better about that. If it was just Amnon going there, maybe a little concerned. But if all the sons go there, we're good to go. Sound fair enough? So they're going to go to Baal Hazor, and now Absalom's revenge is going to go live. Absalom returned to Baal Hazor to prepare his personal servants and to plan and the protection that he'll give them. So basically what Absalom said is this to his men, his servants, his guards: listen, when Amnon is in high spirits from drinking wine, and I say to you, strike Amnon down, don't be afraid. That's the signal. Haven't I given you this order? Be strong and be brave. Okay, that seems a bit strange, but let's go with it. Why doesn't Absalom have his men, why does he have his men kill him and not himself?
So he can still be king.
Yeah. Plausible deniability. You know, everybody in politics, you know, hey, I have a letter here that says this was covered. I mean, what I was doing was acceptable. It's the next guy up the chain. Well, his servants aren't going to have plausible deniability. His servants are going to be caught red-handed if anything goes south on this thing. Absalom can always say, well, I didn't know what was going on. I mean, they must have been plotting and planning. In other words, he's trying to keep his hands clean so that when he does take the crown, he doesn't have a murder of his brother on his conscience or his hands. Make sense?
True politician.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. He'd be.
And who's gonna believe a servant over a master when they
Exactly.
when they try to throw him under the bus?
That's right. Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You're exactly right. Great blue politician. Let's go. Okay. On schedule. A short time later, the king's son all arrive on their Uber mules. So, you know, hey, I need a mule up to Belhazar. Okay, yeah, I'll be there in 5 minutes, pick you up. And remember, these are not donkeys, these are mules. The mules can run a little faster than the donkey. They could probably sprint about 30, 35 miles an hour. So don't get this image of just plodding along, you know, like, oh hum, oh hum. I mean, they can book if they need to. Plus, they're very stable animals. So y'all know the difference between a donkey and a mule. Remember the donkey when we talked about Mark? We talked about every donkey, true donkey, has a cross on its back. And they don't know why it's there. Of course, we know why it's there, because Jesus rode the donkey in, and as he rode the donkey, he saw the cross on the donkey's back, symbolizing what he was going to be experiencing in the next week. Anyways, but these guys rode mules, not donkeys, and the party gets started, okay? But remember what Nathan said by the word of the Lord. From this time on, David, because you struck down Uriah the Hittite by the sword and took his wife to be your own, you have despised me. You have thought little of me. You have neglected obedience to my words. You thought satisfying your desires was more important than obeying your master. Therefore, your family will live by the sword. So this has already been prophesied. Okay. Now the whole thing with Amnon and Tamar, that wasn't a sword situation per se, but that was definitely a tear in the fabric of the family without hesitation. Well, as the celebration continues and Amnon's enjoying the fine wine and the food and everybody's having a great time, I mean, I could just imagine everybody's drinking and having a great time. It's going good. All of a sudden, at Absalom's signal, they murder Amnon. Now, it's interesting that the author, he doesn't put a lot of details into the party because that's not the important part. The important part is that Absalom gives the signal and they murder Amnon right there at the dining room table. Okay? Now, what about the other brothers that are there? So you've got Amnon who's there, but you've still got other brothers. Okay, they're in line to the throne behind Absalom, but they're not right there next in line. But what would you think if you were a brother of Amnon, and all of a sudden Absalom has his servants kill him?
Get on that ride that
Yeah, that's what they did. They got all the king's sons arose. That's a nice way of saying they got out of Dodge as fast as possible. They each mounted his mule and they fled. Okay, and where are they going to go to? Well, 8 miles south to Jerusalem. Okay. Any questions, comments, input, insights about this? News travels fast. It sure does.
Is Solomon one that's there or not?
Was Solomon there? No, I don't think he was there at this point. I don't think he's. I just don't think he was there. I can't say for sure, but I just don't think he was at this scene. Anyone else? Well, news travels fast to Jerusalem. While they were on their way, a report reached David. Absalom has struck down all the sons of the king. Not one of them is left alive. Now, how did David get that information? Think about it for a second. CNN, yeah, fake news. Well, here's probably what happened. You got to remember, there's servants there, and there's servants of the brothers that are there. So there's quite a crowd there. As soon as it happened, and Amnon was being stabbed repeatedly to death, one of the servants bolted as fast as possible and got back to Jerusalem a few minutes before the rest of the crew got there. So someone bolted back fast because it's the only way. I mean, there wasn't email, there wasn't carrier pigeons. News got there very, very fast. So one of the servants had to get there as quick as possible. And now the servants are thinking, oh my gosh, Absalom is killing all the sons because he first starts with Amnon and then he's going to go down the line and kill all of them. I got out of there barely, so to speak, but that's probably what's going to happen. So he's assuming this is going to happen. So now what is David thinking about this news? If you were David, what in the world would you be thinking? I mean, Absalom is the only viable son for the crown, and he just murdered every son in the family. I mean, David just must be thinking, what in the world just happened? Every son I helped give birth to. So, I mean, every one of them are done. And remember, the promise that God gave is that one of his sons would have a forever kingdom. I mean, David just must be completely undone. And again, how could he have missed the warning signs? I didn't know Absalom was going to kill Amnon and all the other sons, and the guilt and the shame and what he must have been feeling. And then it has to always come back to the regret of that one horrible decision. One spring day, I wonder if it was on the same spring day 2 years later that all that happened. Be interesting to find out. All of that created all of this. The king got up, tore his robe, and threw himself on the ground. His advisors also tore their clothes in horror and sorrow. I mean, basically the whole crown is in jeopardy, because if all the sons are dead except for Absalom, Absalom is probably going to try to take over the crown. I mean, they don't know if there's troops coming at this point, if there's spies in the court. I mean, there's just no way of knowing. This is so outside the norm of what would take place. Well, cue Jonadab. Remember last time we ran into Jonadab? He was the one that helped Amnon. He came to Amnon and said, hey, how come you look so depressed? Oh, I love my sister Tamar, but I just can't ever see her. Hey, I got a plan. Why don't you pretend you're sick? And then when the king comes to you and says, why are you sick? Say, I don't feel good, but could you send Tamar to bake bread in front of me? That's the Jonadab we're talking about. That's sly guy. But just then Jonadab, the son of David's brother Shemiah, Shemuel, I'm not sure how you say it. They say it so many different ways, arrived and said, no, don't believe that all the king's sons have been killed. It's only Amnon. Absalom had been plotting this ever since Amnon raped his sister Tamar. It's like, you have a piece of information like that, and you didn't go to the king to give that piece of information? This is supposed to be good news? Oh, they're not all dead. It's just one of my sons. The crown prince is dead. It really shows his character. I mean, I appreciate that he's pragmatic and that he can look at a situation and read it correctly. But so now, my lord king, do not take to heart the report that all the sons of the king are dead. Only Amnon is dead. Okay, breaking news. Here comes the watchman on the tower. We interrupt this program. The watchman on the Jerusalem wall saw a great crowd coming down the hill, the road from the west. He ran to tell the king, I see a crowd of people coming from the Horano road alongside the side of the hill. See, Jonadab said to the king, look, the sons of the king have arrived. It's just like your servant said. And as Jonadab finished speaking, the sons of the king came in, wailing loudly. Then the king and all the servants also wept very bitterly. Comments, thoughts?
Whole lot of information to take in. when you were in.
Yeah. You have no idea what's happening. I mean, to think that one of your sons would kill another son, and then all of a sudden you have this split in the family, you have no idea what's taking place. And there's no psalm that David wrote to kind of give us an insight into what was going on in David's heart at this time. He did probably most of his psalm writing while he was in the desert. You know, that makes more sense. You have your best communion with God when you're in the midst of a fire or a trial or an affliction. In fact, really, if you're in the middle of a problem or a time of pain or affliction, you can really distill it all down to one question. How big is your God? That really is the question this is why we do what we do every week. It's to help you know your God better. Not just know where a verse is, but to really know him, to know his character, to know that he has your back. He paid a price for you, and he's not going to forget about you. If you bought a brand new sports car for $300,000, you're not going to leave it out in the rain the first day. I mean, when you spend an immeasurable price for someone to buy them back, you're not going to leave that person in a lurch. So how big is your God? Not how big is he to me, but how big is he to you? Do you know that he truly has got you covered in all of these disasters? And we don't have a psalm that David goes to on this and pours out his heart and gives himself to God. He did it when he broke with the whole sin with Bathsheba. He's done it numerous times, but there's just nothing recorded about this. And I think this would be a huge event. Well, there's one loose end. What's the loose end? Hey, what happened to Absalom? Is he writing back with the king's son, saying, "Hey, I slipped. I didn't mean to stab him. It just slipped." Well, remember, 2 years went into planning for this assassination. Where would be the safest place to hide out for Absalom? North? How far north? North Pole? Yeah, north's a good answer. He can't go back to Jerusalem. He could follow David's method of hiding in caves and in the desert, but he's royalty. He's so soft. He's not gonna put himself up in a cave. When dangerous times come, you run home. And that's exactly what he did. Remember, his mom is a foreigner. And where did she come from? She came from Geshur. She was the daughter of the king in Geshur. Meanwhile, Absalom fled. Absalom fled to his grandfather, Tamal, son of Ammud, king of Geshur, and he stayed there 3 years. So as the sons are riding their mules south, he's riding his mule north as fast as he can. You see how he had this thing all planned to a T? I mean, it's one thing to plan a crime, it's another thing to plan your escape from that crime. And that's exactly what he did. This was a very cold, calculated, well thought out 2-year plan for him to be able to eliminate the crown prince. Because that puts him next in line.
He must have had some numbers, because the other sons wouldn't have been going without servants and stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
And they probably weren't a bunch of pansies that were just gonna run, so he must have had, it wasn't no 3 or 4 people coming in and killing him, it must have had a bunch of people
Yeah, it was.
So where's Tamar
for him to run.
now?
She's still at Absalom's house, far as we know. She wouldn't go with him.
She stayed there.
She stayed there. Yeah, because in her mind, she doesn't want to even be seen. She's so humiliated. Well, meanwhile, back in Jerusalem, and King David longed to go to Absalom. What? For he had been consoled over Amnon's death, since he was now dead.
I didn't understand that either.
They might be thinking retribution has been served. Coming to mind about the rape.
I don't know, but that's where it leaves us. That's the end of the chapter. And to me, it's just like, wow. You've lost your only daughter that we know of, named daughter. She's out of the equation. You've lost your firstborn son because your thirdborn son had him stabbed to death, and now you long for Absalom? And
Perhaps they had a kindred spirit. He understood.
I think David is trying to fulfill the prophecy of one of my children are going to be sitting on the throne one way or another. And God says, it's not your plan, it's my plan. I mean, how many times have we tried to put our plan into God's box and let God work our plan?
David, Michael, I wonder why David thought Amnon necessarily would be for now. It didn't happen against them.
You're right.
And why would you put so much stock that Amnon would be the next king? It could be any of them.
That's a very good question. Very good question. Now, again, following this example of Saul and how Jonathan was the crown prince because he was the firstborn, that is the way it's done in the Eastern mindset, is the firstborn receives the double blessing, the firstborn gets the privilege of being the ruler of the household. So David should have said, Lord, which son do you want? Because it may not be the firstborn, because he wasn't the firstborn too, like you wisely just noted. I don't know, that's a good question.
But Absalom was number 3.
Absalom was number 3. Number 2, we went through that last week. Forget his
He
name.
was a nobody.
Yeah, he was just a nobody. I mean, he didn't have aspirations to be like Absalom. Now remember, what was it about Absalom that was pretty impressive? His looks. I mean, he was Fabio way cool. I mean, he looked great. And what else did he have that was pretty impressive? His hair. Thank you. Someone said that quick. I didn't want you to run that one. His hair. I mean, every time he'd cut his hair, he'd have 5 pounds of hair, sent off to Locks of Love or something. But so he looked like a king. He looked good. He looked impressive. I mean, he just had that air about him. And that's why I think he thought that I need to be the one anyways, because I look the part. I am the part. I am the king. So, I mean, he's just so stuck on himself.
David should have remembered he got chosen, not for his looks.
Yeah.
I thought, just, y'all know, my blame that y'all with everybody else all the time, but I thought maybe David was grateful that someone else had done what he should have done.
Boy, I don't know.
That's why I said a kindred spirit. He didn't have a kindred spirit.
That's a good question. I mean, David should have removed Amnon from succession, and he should have taken him out of the royal line for what he did. He should have paid a bride price, but that wouldn't have made sense because basically your son is going to borrow the money from you to pay yourself for a bride price. That didn't make any sense. He technically could have married Tamar, but that would have created all kinds of problems with the people. They would have like, you can't marry your sister, dude. That's not going to work. There's a verse for that. So I don't know. I just think David was so oblivious to what's going on in his family. He doesn't know the face of his sheep very well. I think that's the problem. Stacy?
We oftentimes try to put our human logic into something that we probably can't explain.
Yeah.
Because I've witnessed this with other people, fortunately not for myself, that I've seen fathers go back to a son that has really messed up things in his life before, just to try to step out to reconcile with them. Still his son.
Good point. Good point.
And maybe he's trying to mend fences, even though it's all gone right, because it is still his son.
Right.
And
Good point.
There's many parents that have made that trek.
Excellent point.
I mean, I would be missing my kid after 3 years, even if he was being
Great.
pretty bad.
See, now you're putting yourself in David's shoes. That's the way, I'm sure that is the overriding motivation in David's life. Plus, he wants to have a son on the throne. Okay, he wants the kingdom to carry on, but to be able to reconcile with his next son, so to speak, that seems to make the most sense. I can't fault him for that.
Was this in Northeast Arkansas?
I'm not going to touch that one. Any other insights or questions? I mean, you see how this thing is just starting to unravel like a spool of thread. Just it's going to get more and more tangled up. And yet, here's the beauty. No matter how complicated your situation is, no matter how convoluted you've got yourself into a mess, God has got full control over it because God is going to step in and none of these sons are going to qualify, and God is going to pick the right son to carry on the throne. And even that's going to get messy, but God has got his hand perfectly on this situation. So I think that's the comforting thing, is even though I may not know what's going on, someone does. And as long as I trust or lean on him, I can leave the results to him. Next week, wayward son comes home. This is going to get interesting because as much as David loves him, the people are like, he just murdered your firstborn son. How can you let him right back into the palace? Is there no retribution for any crime? Is there no reconciliation over what he actually did? So it's going to get even more complicated if you thought this was complicated. Father in heaven, thank you for your word. I pray that if there's been people that have hurt us or hurt ones that we love, that we would be willing to walk by faith and leave that revenge or that payback to you. God, don't let us be people that contemplate revenge to hurt others. Let us see a God who's got everything perfectly under control, because you can bring good out of things that are evil, all for your glory. We praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.